Hello everybody, Buddy Webb, Midland, Texas. I'm going to do a video here for you that I'm going to name this the body count. And I've talked about this before, but I have reason to believe that this crime ring, I call them, that's behind just the many crimes that have been committed against me and the many other people, where they've rigged homes across America, all the people reporting people in the attic, and then the suspected murders, the little girl at the oil show party, the previous homeowner died, the week before the oil show started, and the $1 million underground homes, and all that. Basically, the crime ring, and so there's a lot of deaths that have occurred, and some of them are ruled murders, some of them are not, some of them are missing. But I put them on this list to go, hey, this might be connected to this crime ring, and so that's what we're going to go over. And there's a lot of them. There's over 30. So imagine, even if I spend 1 minute on 30 of them talking about it, then I've got a 30-minute video. And so I'm going to fly through this because I can spend a lot of time just talking about Mike Lawhon, you know what I mean, the last homeowner, etc. And I got videos on some of these individual videos, but so I just want to show you there that go through these real quickly. And I think you're going to be amazed. And even if, let's just say 10%, which is a super low number, out of 30, then, well, that's 3 murders, and then that means killers are walking free somewhere, etc. So let's go ahead and get started. This scripture, not long after I had survived, crawled out and survived, got out of the hospital, returned here, and in one morning, of course, never worked again, and before I was shot, I sure wasn't reading my Bible, every day like I do now, and have it, since for many years now. But one day I just opened up my Bible one morning, and I opened up to this scripture. It said, "The earth will disclose the bloodshed on it, and no longer conceal its slain." And it's just like, I believe that's going to happen. I do. There's so much information that's come out. Haley Dunn and a lot of these others. So that's what we're going to talk about on this video. And here we go. I created a spreadsheet, and you can see it's real busy, a lot of stuff, and I just want to take the picture of it so y'all can freeze your frame and come back and look at it if you want. And so I use this as a reference there, okay? But I think it's easier when I go here, because this right here is basically a list of files. I have a folder, and I have these in the same order as the spreadsheet, and it's print screens of this news story or this piece of evidence, whatever. It's everything you saw in that spreadsheet, okay? And it's pretty much in order. The first 3, which I'm gonna open up here, that they're basically different screenshots. Like this one here, I'm gonna show you. This is from Aaron Packelhofer. It was a screenshot off of Facebook one day, and he asked me, he says, "I'm well aware of the many corruption accusations against the Midland Police Department. I'm not sure if it's secret police as much as pure criminal activity by the police, but if I can ask, there are 4 people who were murdered, died in your house. What are their names?" So he was telling me that there were 4 people, and obviously he knows the names of them, and I don't. And he didn't say 5, he didn't say 6, he didn't say 8, he didn't say 42. He said 4, and so he knew exactly how many people have been murdered, died in my house, when I don't, And so that's the point I'm gonna make, that that law enforcement should have talked to Aaron a long time ago. And then it goes on this side of it, where he's a local Mason, and maybe there's connection to Masons, etc. But like I said, I'm going to have to fly through these. This one right here was a woman in Hobbs that was telling me about, she's hearing people in her attic. And then she goes on to tell me that her, about this boyfriend. Her name was Heather O'Donnell, and she's telling me that this boyfriend tried to kill her. His name was Donnie Cobb. She sends me a picture of him. That's him right there. And I'm just showing you the print screen. She believes it's a sex trafficking ring. I think that's what the crime ring is, a sex trafficking ring, prostitution ring, but it's also racketeering, where you're also going to find other crimes, burglary, theft, extortion, blackmail, etc. Okay, but the interesting part of this, and the reason I have it here, is because she told me that when Donnie was drunk, that he and his friend shot a guy. And I said, in Hobbs? And she said, no, in Midland. And I've long wondered if this guy and his friend shot B. Maybe that's what she was saying. And so that's why that print screen is in there. Another thing law enforcement ought to look at. This is emails between myself and Texas Ranger Strain, and there's more to this, but basically I'm telling Ranger Strain up here that I believe that the biggest out of all these crimes, that the biggest is, the ex-wife told me a few weeks before the murder attempt, she said with 100% sincerity, the secret is a group of doctors are killing people for profit. She was dead serious, okay? I believed her then, I believe it now. I'm telling Ranger Strain, listen, I don't have that recorded. You can't record everything, but I have plenty recorded, and my word should be so clear now, that if I say it, you can take it to the bank, and she told me that, and I believe her, and that needs to be investigated, because she didn't say they're just killing Buddy for profit, and there was a lot of profit, if my murder is ruled an accident. She said people. So, there's no telling how many people these doctors have killed, and Ranger Strain writes back and says, how would a doctor make money killing people? This is in 2017, and I'm like, look, I don't know. Ask her. That's I can tell you about the life insurance, and if my murder's ruled an accident, she was going to get $650,000, plus a special paid for house, has $1 million underground home and all that. But basically, you need to investigate. You're the law enforcement officer, and I reminded him that I sent you a video where she admitted to felony extortion on tape. Why don't you just go talk to her and go, hey, look, we're going to put you in prison for extortion. You admitted to it right here. If you don't tell us about these doctors are killing for profit. And that way we can stop the doctors that are killing people for profit, But he quit talking to me. And so anyway, the reason I put it in here, because this whole thing's about the body count. People suspected that could have been murdered by this crime ring, And I think a portion of that is these doctors that are killing people for profit. The oldest one I have here is here in 1981. Okay, this is a missing persons case, Judy Munguia from Odessa, and one thing in here that I've shared this before. But what people didn't know is that Judy Munguia was the aunt, or was the aunt of the first husband of Angie Munguia, and Angie was my friend at the oil show party that told me about the young girl being murdered. Okay, me and Angie used to talk about this case right here. Okay, because rumors right here, this is an editor for the Odessa American, Laura Ludwell Dennis, and she told me herself. Laura told me that the rumor was that Judy was buried under some concrete over in Odessa, and Laura told me that back in probably 2010, and then this guy, Charlie Franks, he comes in here and says his dad, his papa, Malcolm Owens, what he said, poured the concrete that you're talking about. And he says, I'm almost positive she's under this slab. So I think, that this is a possibility that this murder, and this is the year I graduated, that's how many, many years ago it is, because I'm a granddad, that this could be connected to the crime ring. And so that's the oldest one I have. The next one I have is this, and it's an obituary for John Lejeune, and this is the late brother-in-law of U.S. Congressman Mike Conaway, and he used to live across the street from my house. So you can see, how interesting that might be, especially since multiple people said that underground facilities and tunnels are here, and it's believed to be used for oil show parties and and forced prostitution, several murders, etc. And this home in itself, that's what all this is about, is showing that a past owner of my home, Brandy Merrill, she marries a guy named Daniel Price, and they were living in this home. I call it the Conaway home when I first moved here. Okay, and it was Brandy that sold the home to Michael Lawhon. Mike and Sarah Lawhon. Of course, Mike's the one that died here, suspected to be a murdered here. And then I bought the home from his widow, Sarah. Okay, and so that's what I was showing you here. And then now there's a Wilson family living in that home, and there was a Wilson sibling here, Marcy Wilson. So the question has been asked if this home is still in the Conaway family, because here's the Wilson, there's Wilson, and this back to Suzanne Conaway. Okay, that's Mike Conaway's wife. Okay, and so I just want to show you that, and that one's back January 2008. I really don't know how he died. That's about a year before I moved here, a little less than a year. Okay. The next one, and I'm going by date, okay? And this is a missing person case. Rini Escobar Sanchez reported missing from Odessa, July 12, 2008. A lot more to this story. I've got a whole video on that. I got a couple of videos on this. But one thing is that a former neighbor, Marilyn DeLuigi, told me Mike Lawhon died in my house, but she also said somebody else died here before him. And Rini went missing 3 months before Mike died. And there's some other evidence and things that happened that's made me suspect that maybe Rini was killed, and maybe he was killed in my living room, where there was I thought it was a blood spot. Okay. The next date here is Mike Lawhon, and that's in October 12, 2008. And that's the week before the 2008 oil show started. I think that's significant. I found out that he was telling his friends about people breaking this house before he died. Obviously this home was already rigged. Same people breaking my home, today, when I was shot, before I reported it, before I was shot. That's because there's an underground facility in the backyard. And Mike was reporting the same things, and now he's dead. Now, I also want to point out his mom's name was Sue Tennis. We're going to see her. There's a lot of information. I got a whole video on Mike Lawhon that I won't even go over. Okay. The next dated one I have is December 27, 2010, and that's Haley Dunn. And that's really the date that she was reported missing from Colorado City. And of course, I've got many videos on this. I've got a dozen people documented saying that she was killed over in Odessa, but her remains were found on March 16, 2013 outside of Scurry County, and 2 days after I had sent this email to the Department of Justice and suggested that they come here and they look in the underground facility. So you can say, I wrote them and said, I've got plenty of evidence to support allegations, underground facility here. Maybe she's held under, by sex slavers under my home right now. And 2 days after I sent this, she happens to be found, and she'd been missing for 2 years. And that was in Scurry County. And now there's a dozen people documented saying Haley was killed in Odessa, Ector County. So, I have a lot of reasons to think Haley Dunn's connected to this house. I wonder if her and her mom, maybe even her dad, were at the mole show parties, which was 2 months before she went missing. And when I found out her mom was a stripper, then that made a lot of sense. Okay. This is also part of the Haley Dunn stuff. This was the drug rehab counselor that said Brett Bushman confessed to her. This was she sent me this email that was a screenshot of an email she sent to her supervisors, her resignation. But the big part, the reason it's in here is because she's telling her bosses there is that this guy, Brett Bushman, said he did have a hand in stuffing a child's body inside of a safe. That seems like pretty big stuff right there to me. And it was a reference to Haley Dunn, okay, 13-year-old Haley Dunn. And then also, though, the big thing, his confession of the involvement in 3 separate homicides. And that's the other thing I'll tell you. We're not talking about one murder, 2 murders. We're talking about multiple murders. So I've always suspected, in 3 separate homicides, one of them's Haley, and then we'll get into it here in a minute. I think another one's Cody Mercer. And then, I don't know who the other ones are, okay. And then here's the next date, 2011. This is in October. And this is on the Cody Mercer murder. I just did a video on this, but a woman named Brandy Dunn said that the murder of Haley and the murder of Cody were connected, and they were filmed. And I said, they're filmed? Yeah. And she said, the cops have it. I said, the cops have it. I mean, that's crazy, right? I mean, it is, but that's also, it's crazy that I had to pay, a private investigator to identify a secret police caught on camera, and it took 6 years. That's crazy. It is. And it's true. That's what's going on here is and that's probably why we have all these murders and everything. But anyway, here's a second person, Jessica Lee Hadley, and she's the one that said she watched the video and she said it was disgusting right here. Yes, that's correct. The video, the whole thing, it's disgusting and absolutely true. So there's another person confirming that these murders were filmed, and the cops have the films. Amazing. Okay, and here's the next one on dates: 2011, December 7, 2011, and 52 days before I'm ambushed and shot, my mom dies. And I love and miss my mom, and I can't even tell you how much. And, I found out I was lied to about that. I contacted the police, and of course I was shot, a few weeks later. But, that's another one. And then just right after, I just did a video talking about this. Right after Mom died, then Don Calloway dies. And Don Calloway was my first father-in-law, and him and Ann Calloway, my first mother-in-law, they built that home over there in Hobbs that I lived in on Rolling Meadows. And looking back, I now suspect it was rigged with hidden underground access and people in the attic like this one here and all the other ones around the country. And Don built that. But then Mom dies, Don dies, and then after I get shot just a couple weeks after that, and then my dad ends up marrying Ann Calloway. And I did put that in the video. So that's another, a death that I've wondered is connected to the crime ring. Was here's my mom's, here's Don Calloway. Okay. And then just a couple days after that, it's suspected that this attorney landman, Matthew Don Hyman, died in my hallway when I put electricity on my doorknob. And, I've got videos on several videos on this talking about here and why, and his friends, were desperate to shut me up. They didn't want me asking questions, and then landmans are already suspects for oil show parties, etc. Here's his sister-in-law telling me, that he dies of a heart defect that nobody knew about. Well, electricity stops the heart, and then I'm like, well, what time did he die? Because if he died in the morning, it wasn't him, But no, he died the same time, that I put electricity on my door, and so I'm thinking 2 weeks before the murder attempt of my life, then Matt might have grabbed my door handle and it killed him. And then to take that one step further, what I really believe happened, he was there with his friends, and they watched him die, and since they were breaking a private home, they didn't call for help, so they let their friend die because they were involved in breaking in my home in a felony. That's the whole thing about these people that are rigging these private homes. They're committing felonies. It's not their property, it's my property. They come on here. I mean, it's like when I shoot them, I'm protecting my property. They shoot me, it's capital crime. They go to prison for life. It's lose-lose breaking into a private home. And so here's my next one here. Which one is this one? Oh, this one's interesting. I just barely got out of the hospital. Okay. This is dated March 6th. I actually, I got out January 28th, and then I was out 10 days later. So I was out of the hospital. This is about 5 days after I was ambushed and shot. A neighbor, Joe Martin, he lived at 3811 Fair Circle on the corner house. And that house other people had brought up as you need to look at them people at that house over there on 3011. But this guy was sitting in a car where this guy shot Stephen Gowen. So this is the Stephen Gowen murder that happened there in March 2012. And like I said, sitting next to him was Joe Martin, and he was a neighbor in my neighborhood. And I wonder if that murder wasn't because of the underground homes here. If that didn't happen because of the crime ring stuff. Kurt Westerman here, and Kurt dies here on April 8, 2013. He was a salesman for us, used to come up here. Kurt's the one that found the first home for me on Todd Road. I have videos on that as well, and it was Kurt's friends that found that. But I used to, he used to come by work all the time because he's a salesman for ESI, and And I remember him talking about prostitution in the area. So he was a young man that died, and or my age or whatever. And so I always wondered, maybe I wonder if that's connected. Here's another one. This is in 2013 in April. This one was a close neighbor. I didn't know him, but I overheard on the scanner this was an unattended death. So he dies there, and nobody's there to witness it, right? And so it seemed suspicious to me. And being that he, he worked in the oil field or directional drilling right here, young man, and he died, and he only lived a few blocks away. And and then we got tunnels, underground homes, and all that stuff here. Then I've wondered if maybe this Ryan Patrick Lillard, and I think I even looked up some of the family members. I think he was married to a Jennifer Tabor or something like that. Here's the next one that says it's in May 2013. Okay, this is, we're going to call the Joe Kidd death or murder, suicide. It was ruled a suicide. But here, Mary Kidd Partridge, I've known her, Mary Kidd. I went to school with her, known her all my life. And here she's telling me, she told him she would have him whacked. A guy who she tried to hire to do it is willing to testify, and the cops don't do shit, just another day. So Mary's telling me that basically that she believes her brother was murdered, and he had just reported this girlfriend that lives in Midland, okay, and because he was scared or whatever, and here's this information about being whacked and all this, and so that's what Mary said. And interesting, the woman she's talking about, I'm trying to think of her name. It'll come to me here in a minute. Young was her last name. She just out of the blue asked to move into my home. And then that's right. The one that Mary told me, she was wondering what was involved in the murder of her brother over in Hobbs. And like I said, but just out of the blue. And I'd never told her that hey, that's what Mary had told me. But, out of the blues, she was wanting. I'm going to show you that. I have a print screen of it. This is Joe Kidd right here. This is Mary's little brother died. They ruled it a suicide, but Mary went on, and said evidence was found. Here it is, Stacy Young Hawkins. And I think she married a Brasino, a year or 2 years ago. And, and this is email I sent to myself, and I print screen our conversation. This was in March 15, 2016, and Stacy Young Hawkins contacted me today and asked to move in with me. I turned her down. I didn't tell her that I heard she was possibly connected with the murder of Joe Kidd. I'm writing myself, and here's the timestamp print screen, but here it is. It says, okay, don't freak out. I need a place to stay and a friend. I'm a normal person, And then she was also telling me over in Hobbs, Earl Young's a well-known name. He owned like 7 Western auto stores, and so everybody knew who Earl Young is, and I've known some of her family and Janet and Clint Peterson and them people. That's this family. And then I believe her mom here worked for one of the banks here, still does, here in Midland. And so anyways, I like, no, I don't think, but I thought it was really interesting. There might be possible leads here. Okay, 2013 and July 27, 2013. James William Pruitt, young man, dies. This is the husband of my realtor that found me this home, Janine Pruitt. That's my realtor. And he owned a Diamond Tech concrete cutting company. And what I'm saying up at the top is if you're going to install a hidden trap door on a concrete slab home, you got to cut the concrete, okay? And so I wondered, was James William Pruitt, had he been in homes cutting concrete, cutting trap doors in homes, because it's believed these homes are rigged all over the place, hidden underground access, and then this young man dies at 47 years old, and so, but I'm not saying he did or if he was murdered because of it or whatever, but it was, it was interesting that he died at that age, and then the connection back to the concrete cutting, and it's good leads for law enforcement, to look at his records, maybe look at other concrete cutters, talk to them, and find out who's cutting, trap doors in homes so they can kill and steal from innocent homeowners like me and the many other crime victims. Okay, Midland Crime Stoppers. the young girl. This one I've hit many times. This is the girl that the remains were found in 2013, 14 to 21 years old, and I believe it's the girl Angie told me about that was murdered at the 2010 oil show party. Okay, and so I've contacted Sheriff Kreiner over that many times. Brandon Lawson, this one here, a lot of people know this story, and it was in San Angelo, and I can't tell you how many people have contacted me and talked about Brandon Lawson. I have no leads on him, and the only reason I think it might be connected to it is one, he worked in the oil field, and my question was, has Brandon ever been to an oil show party? That was my question. If he had, then you might find a lead there, and he made some phone calls, some people were chasing him, and he's never been found. You can go Google Brandon Lawson sometime, and might or might not. Zoe Campos, missing a young girl from Lubbock. She's missing a long time. I remember getting in contact with her private investigators and with that went back to her mother. And I was suggesting at the time, y'all need to push law enforcement to search these underground homes here. You need to find out where she was at during the oil show parties. Maybe there's a connection. But they did finally find Zoe's remains, and a guy confessed to murdering her over there. But I still have them questions of on the why part, and was Zoe here in Midland? Was she here on January 28, 2012? Was she here during the October 2010 during the oil show parties? That's believed when the prostitution, forced prostitution, and all that stuff was going on. Okay, here's another dated one. We're in 2014 in October. This one is Secret Police, Midland Sheriff Deputy Mike Naylor. The gun that killed Naylor was reported stolen, and that's always throws up red flags. Naylor was the second Secret Police seen on camera arriving at my home 19 minutes after I was ambushed and shot, but his name wasn't on the police report. That's fishy in itself, right? For this reason, I suspect he was under my home when I was shot, and the question had been asked if he was going to snitch on the other secret police. Maybe he was silenced, and they blamed it on this other guy. He was identified as the secret police in 2018 by my PI. So it was 4 years after he died, 6 years after he was caught on camera at my house, that he was identified. The public's never been told. There's part of 191 named Naylor Highway, right? But the public was never told he was a secret police. I had a reward offered for his identity in a capital murder attempt. That's been hidden from the public by the press and by our police. Chad Simpson, okay? This is the other secret police, and 2 months after Naylor died, a secret police and Midland K-9 police officer, Chad Simpson, murders his wife and kills himself. There's his wife, Sandra Simpson. They had just adopted these two babies, so now they got two orphan children right there, and some people have asked the same question, some people thought Chad was a good guy, maybe Chad was going to, tell what he knew about the underground homes, and the other secret police didn't want that to happen, and they were silenced. Maybe that was a double murder. And so here my private investigator found a witness where Chad told him he was inside my house. We got him caught on camera, and then there's the news story about Chad, a police officer shoots wife and self in apparent suicide. Once again, his name wasn't on the police report, and he was seen inside my house. Now, in a murder-suicide, of course, the murder victim, they don't get a choice. The suicide person, they make the choice for themselves. But the murder victim, she's kind of like me. She's home minding her own business when he comes in there with a gun and decides to kill her. And I mean, that's where I look at Sandra Simpson. She's, here she's murdered her home. Of course, it was her husband was a Midland K-9 police officer that murdered her, but she didn't die till 3 days later. There was a whole story about that. What's interesting is 2 days before this alleged murder-suicide, I posted this story on my Facebook called Rape and Murder, and it told about the young girl at the oil show party that had police there, okay? And I showed a picture from my camera, and it was a guy wearing a Midland K-9 police jacket. Chad Simpson was a Midland K-9 police officer. Now we know, all these years later, that was Chad in my house. And so maybe Sandra read this and she asked her husband, hey, imagine she's pissed about this little girl being murdered and police are at the party and she sees him inside my house and she says, is this you? That's your jacket? What are you doing? And he's going, oh, I'm busted. Boom, you're dead. Boom, I'm dead. Now 2 babies are orphans. Maybe that happened. Or maybe some of the other secret police decided to kill them. We don't know, But what we know is the public has never been told the connection between that murder-suicide and the capital attempted murder in my life. Okay. Let's go to look at the next one. Jacayla. Okay. And I'm getting kind of out of order here because there's another one here. Jacayla. Let's do this one first, okay? Here she is, Jacayla Salazar there, and missing since August 11, 2015. And she was missing for a while, and I had some of her friends contact me, and that's what I was showing you a minute ago, okay? Right here, and it was Petey Self right here. I worked with her at Burger King. She was dating her manager, a Hispanic guy. Can't remember his name. He would pimp her out. Okay, remember, this whole thing, I've come back thinking it's connected with sex trafficking ring, right? That's why I think Jacayla murder might be connected to the crime ring, And so she goes on talking about this trick, she did, and etc. And she said she was a sweet girl, just lost. I wish I'd remember his name. He's from Houston. Javier, that's his name, Javier. He was in the middle of a divorce when he met Jackie at the Burger King over in Odessa. So that's a lead for law enforcement, maybe who murdered Jacayla, and maybe for this whole crime ring. And so there was another one. Here's a couple more. I wondered if they wasn't connected to the crime ring. To these 2 teenagers that they dug up outside of Midland, buried 25 foot deep on this tree farm, And their name was Ashley Marie Cruz Rodriguez, John Raymond Iglesias Alvarez, okay? And you can see them, young ones. And what I wondered if they were people in the attic somewhere, Didn't have to be my house because there's a whole bunch of other houses that are rigged. Maybe it was my house, I don't know. But that's what I wondered if it was. And the whole thing seemed fishy. They get an anonymous tip that they're buried out there. You got Sheriff Painter digging out there. They dig and dig and dig till they finally found them, And so they were really, I guess believing that tip was good, and it was. Here's another one. Andy Stover from my hometown. He dies over in Lubbock, okay? And you can see he's from Hobbs, New Mexico. We had lots of mutual friends. So, one thing I said, maybe law enforcement needs to check and see where Andy Stover was during the oil show parties, during, the weekend I was ambushed and shot, He dies on January 25th, 2016, and the official story is he set his house on fire and then committed suicide. He shot himself, which, most people go, that sounds like bullshit. Ain't nobody sets their house on fire and then shoots themselves, but that's what they're saying happened, But here I want to show you just part of the things you can find online. The news stories. A week ago, Stover's found dead in a Northwest Lubbock residence, suffered a fire damage. They ruled his death a suicide, and evidence was found. He took his own life, shot himself in the head. A Stover family statement went on to say that they believe Andrew was the victim of organized crime murder, okay? And even back to child sex trafficking and etc. And so I've wondered if from my hometown. And see, his sister was on my Facebook, and his girlfriend contacted me. I actually talked to his girlfriend on the phone after he died, And so I wondered if that's not another murder connected, to this crime ring and the crimes here in Midland. This is the late mother of Mike Lawhon, the last homeowner of my house, Susan Tennis, okay? And she dies in April 9th, 2016, a cancer, okay? It was her house was one of the places Mike Lawhon supposedly died. Because if you remember, he dies, in 2008, October 12th, and the Odessa American posts a death notice that says that he died in Fort Worth at her house. Okay, that was at her house. Well, 4 days later, they post a second death notice and they change the location of death. Say he died at his residence, which is here in Midland. Okay, and so and the other thing here is that his sister contacted me and told me they had a brother, Brian Dennis, was a big Kansas City Chiefs fan. Well, look here, she's a Kansas City Chiefs fan right there. And I found a Kansas City Chiefs cap under the cabinet from where I'd been shot. And obviously it was left after they poured concrete when they were covering this up. And here's the obituary for Susan Tennis. And she, interestingly, she worked for Clayton Williams here in Midland for a while. She worked at the Petroleum Club, the Plaza Club, the Green Tree Country Club, you know. And of course, I'll tell you another thing that the ex-wife had told me this when she told me that the doctors killed him for profit. She told me this, that they have a medicine that if given incorrectly would cause cancer in a known number of days. And she was a cancer nurse, and you know, that's what she gave chemo, but she gave people chemo that was her job. And you know, and she told me that 100% serious that about these doctors killing people for profit. And then here, you know, Susan Dennis dies of cancer. Even my dad died of a cancer rate didn't run in the family. You know, it just seems pretty convenient, you know. Here, this guy who sentenced 45 years in prison, he murdered Kathy Lujan here in Midland. And the reason I have her on the list is because she grew up across the street from my home, you know, or I believe she did, because she's the daughter of the locksmith, Bruce Paget, that lives at across the street over there. That, if you remember, here, it wasn't just a couple months ago, I made a video of 2 or 3 dump loads or dump trucks full of dirt being dumped in the backyard of that house right there. And I wondered if it wasn't filling up underground tunnels, you know, homes, etc., whatever, you know, connected to all the crimes. Here's my dad. Sadly, Dad died March 20th, 2017. As I just said, that he died of cancer, wasn't running in the family. You know, I didn't even, you know, barely talked to him the last 3 years of his life because he married Ann Calloway, and that's it. That's who built that Hobbs home that I now believe was rigged. Okay, and I long suspected my dad knew about the crimes against me, and that's probably why he chose not to talk to me for the last few years of his life, because the evidence, right, you know, is just more and more evidence come out to over the top, you know. And in a normal family, you know, your dad or your brother or your kids, they support the family, you know, especially when somebody breaks in their house and tries to murder them, you know. And that's what happened here at my home. And so, where are we at? I don't want to get lost here. The next one, 2018, okay. Caitlin Dennison, okay, she's a young girl. She flies into town from Reno, never seen again, and to Midland, suspected to be in human trafficking, and so I made a video on that recently, missing in Midland, and y'all can see that. Here's the next date, 2018. This is my ex-wife, Cindy, and I made a video last week about it called Freaking Addict, right? And here's where, you know, she says, I never got in your freaking addict. And see, what had happened was, after I was ambushed and shot, I start hearing people going, yeah, people, they're thinking you're crazy because you thought people were in your Hobbs home too. And I'm like, in the attic, your Hobbs home. I'm going, what? My daughter saw a light on in the attic. I thought Cindy got up there. You know, I'd forgot about it because I proved Cindy was breaking in my house. And then in 2018, I asked her, I said, Cindy, I know you were in my house, but did you get my attic? She said, I didn't get in a freaking attic. And I'm thinking, well, if you didn't get in the freaking attic, then somebody else got in a freaking attic. That meant that home was rigged. You know, that's what I was saying a minute ago. And then it was built by them first in-laws. And that's where the other deaths are. Well, Cindy goes to the hospital. She ain't feeling good. And she dies. You know, that's another suspected murder, you know, as far as I'm concerned. And I never found an obituary for her. This is from our Hobbs High Alumni Facebook group, and it's just announcing that Cindy died. We were in the same class. 2019 in August, this guy, they find him here in Midland, and he was the friend. He's a friend of a friend, is what it was. And so, you know, I don't know much about it other than that they find this guy. I think it was in a nice neighborhood in the sleeper cab, shot in the chest, you know. And I'm going to show you here. I think there's there's a Crime Stoppers on it. Richie D. Stewart in the sleeper cab of a semi-truck, and determined he was deceased with a single gunshot wound to the chest areas. They're working this case as a homicide, okay? So that's another one. I wondered if that ain't connected to the crime ring here, you know. And, you know, and I want to show you another one here. Tammy Gass and it contacted me on private messenger, and this was her son, Caden Gass, and I want to add this one in there. So she tells me this story here, how they closed Caden's case due to no evidence. They said everything is too clean. They don't have any direction. They're calling it an overdose. They never did anything or talked to anyone, and his talks showed 4 grams of cocaine. They still say he didn't do this to himself and didn't get there by himself, and whoever did it used his truck. We got the truck back and had to pay, etc., etc., etc. Anyway, his mom Tammy thinks that her son was killed over there, Caden, and especially when she talked to the people that were there with him, they're like, I'm so sorry, and like they know something. So that's another suspected murder here, maybe connected to this crime ring that's just literally out of control. They're breaking into homes all over the place, and the press is helping cover it up. I mean, what, I've got a dozen police scanner calls of people reporting people in the attic. I was ambushed and shot reporting people in my attic. It's going on. I saw a person in my attic. I've got 100 videos, burglar alarms going in my attic. I mean, and the press is keeping it hidden so they can keep breaking into homes, keep stealing, and keep killing people. And then as also what I said, I had to save up disability money and pay to get the secret police identified that were caught planting evidence in this capital attempted murder. Here's another one. Crystal Lynn Hall. She was like Caitlin Dennison. She comes to Midland on a bus, though, and never seen again. Once again, it's suspected to be connected with human trafficking, with the sex trafficking. Okay. Here we go. Here's a little more about last known location for Crystal. This was in October 2019. Was Midland, Odessa. Lives in Pennsylvania. No Facebook activity since September 25th. She took a Greyhound bus from Altoona to Midland, and then it got real interesting right here. Crystal also told him that she believed that she was potentially going to be involved in sex trafficking, as she was with 4 men and 4 women, and the women were not allowed to talk to each other. This is before she's never heard from again. All this is in Midland on this sex trafficking. Over and over, you keep hearing the same thing, And then last one I got on the list, this is a recent one. This is Michelle Lynn Stevens. This is the sister of Andy Stover over in Lubbock, the guy that supposedly sets his house on fire and then shoots himself, right? But, where the family said they believed it was organized crime. Well, she was on my friends list, and I long suspected that she knew. She never shared my stories. She never clicked like on them or nothing. I long suspected that she knew about the crimes going on here. I don't have no information on how she died or what or anything, but I just put her in the list. And so, it's a huge list. That's not saying everybody on this list was killed by the crime ring at all, but even if half of them are, just think about what that is. And, we need, real law enforcement to do real investigations around here. This is Buddy Webb, Midland, Texas.